What if one of F1's historic teams had already solved the mysteries of the new 2026 regulations before anyone else? What if that team was Ferrari? In 2026, Formula One will make one of the biggest technical leaps in its history. It's not just a new car or a superficial aerodynamic redesign. What lies ahead is a complete redefinition of single-seater DNA, new minimum weight rules, strict energy efficiency limits, severe restrictions on energy recovery, and a completely different hybrid architecture. Each team has the challenge of restarting from scratch, but not all of them have started from the same line. While most teams are just reconciling the first virtual prototypes or experimenting with separate concepts, Frédéric Vasseur surprised everyone with a revelation that was not thunderous, but was devastating for his rivals. In a series of seemingly routine interviews, the Ferrari boss dropped a strategic bombshell. Ferrari has been developing the 2026 car as a fully integrated concept for months. No engine on one hand, chassis on the other, and aerodynamics separately. No. The SF26, although it does not yet have an official name, has been conceived as a unique piece from the beginning. This decision completely changes the game. Ferrari is not chasing performance, but validating an integration that they have already tested on the track. Its new generation hybrid engine is not a promise in development. It has already been tested with positive results in Barcelona. But beyond the times or the power, the most important thing is that this engine has been designed as part of the car, not as a component that must then be adapted to the available space. This means that the thermal electrical distribution, internal packaging, cooling systems, exhausts, recovery boxes, and internal aerodynamic flows have already been optimized to work together from day one. That level of technical maturity suggests that Ferrari is not in the exploratory phase as many imagined. It is in the validation phase, and that, in the context of a regulatory revolution, represents an almost unattainable advantage for those who are still trying to understand how their own car is going to behave. It's as if while others were designing puzzle pieces without the reference image, Ferrari was already fitting the final pieces together with the box lid in hand. Furthermore, Vasseur was even more precise. What Ferrari will bring to Bahrain is not an experiment. It is Spec B, a more advanced technical set than what was tested in Barcelona. Spec A was used to test reliability, correlation, and thermal stress conditions. But the Spec B is designed to simulate racing, extreme heat, crosswind, and abrasion, like those experienced in Sakhir. That is, while other teams continue to collect basic data, Ferrari is polishing details in a realistic environment. This strategy has another critical implication. Ferrari designed its test phases with a surgical correction margin. Barcelona was his secret laboratory, far from the cameras and without the pressure of competition. Instead, Bahrain will be their dress rehearsal just before the real debut. Vasseur made it clear, any serious problems in Sakhir can no longer be corrected in time for Australia. And yet, the team's body language, its statements, and the progressive nature of its schedule suggest that they do not expect problems. They wait for confirmation. The silence of his rivals is also revealing. Neither Mercedes, nor McLaren, nor Red Bull have shown such an articulated plan. Some sources close to the paddock indicate that certain teams have even been forced to review their internal schedules after learning of the depth of Ferrari's development. Because if what Ferrari has revealed is not smoke, then they are already on the launching lap, while others are still on the installation lap. This revelation is the true start of the 2026 season. It is not a sprint race. It is a preparation race. And Ferrari, for the first time in years, seems to have started first, faster, and with clear direction. The question is no longer whether they are ahead. The question is, how much? And who will be able to catch up with them before they cross the finish line of technical mastery of an era that is just beginning? Vasseur's revelation was not just another technical fact in the Formula One media machine. It was a declaration of intent that quickly generated shock waves throughout the paddock. Because if Ferrari has really advanced conceptual development and is in the validation stage while others are still designing in simulation, the risk is not only losing performance in 2026. It is being trapped in a static hierarchy that will drag on for years. Recent F1 history shows that whoever dominates at the beginning of a regulatory change tends to capitalize on it over multiple seasons. It happened with Mercedes in 2014, when they dominated the hybrid era from day one thanks to a revolutionary engine architecture that took their rivals half a decade to replicate. And it happened with Red Bull in 2022, taking advantage of the new ground effect aerodynamics better than anyone. In both cases, teams that started behind were condemned to fight from behind, looking for solutions that were already optimized by their rivals. That's what they now fear in the paddock. The reaction in the halls of Sakhir and in the technical offices of its competitors has ranged from skepticism, alarm, and rethinking. Engineers from McLaren, Mercedes, and even Red Bull have begun to review the pace of their development after discovering that Ferrari is no longer talking in terms of future concepts, but rather about real validations with on-track data. The difference between a CFD model and a car running in real conditions is enormous, and that, amid a rule change, could translate into an advantage of half a second or more per lap at the start of the 2026 cycle. But there is something even more worrying for rivals: the feeling that Ferrari is not showing all its cards. If what has been publicly communicated is already enough to worry, what are they saving for the official tests? Some suspect that the Spec B they will take to Bahrain is not the definitive version, but rather an intermediate platform that will allow them to evaluate race simulations and collect exhaustive data on the new Pirelli 2026 tires, still in development. This would allow them to fine-tune the thermal balance of the car, the degradation in long stints, and the interaction between thermal and electrical energy in long stretches of curves and straights. The consequence most feared by the teams is clear: that Ferrari arrives in Australia not only with a faster car, but also a more reliable, more predictable, and better understood car. And that breaks one of the fundamental principles of modern Formula One: the expectation of technical convergence. In contemporary F1, the FIA continually seeks to reduce gaps between teams through budget caps, wind tunnel restrictions, and partial freezes in key areas. But all that effort becomes insufficient if a team begins the new era with a car that does not need major changes to be competitive. That is, if Ferrari gets the base architecture of its 2026 car right, the rest of the teams could be trapped in an endless cycle of minor adjustments, always one step behind. The rumors have already started. There is talk of internal technical meetings at Mercedes and McLaren, where accelerating the testing schedule for key components would be evaluated. It has even been leaked that at Red Bull, some engineers have requested extra hours of nighttime simulation out of fear that the Ferrari power unit is reaching levels of energy efficiency that break the competition's initial projections. And that becomes doubly critical when the FIA has imposed specific limits on energy regeneration and hybrid power sharing, forcing all teams to surgical precision in design. The technical hierarchy of Formula One is always built in the dark, but it manifests itself brutally on the track. If the paddock begins to assume that Ferrari has already cracked the code of the new regulations, then the pressure on the rest will be suffocating. And when the pressure grows, so does the margin of error. The biggest fear of rival teams is not losing races in 2026. It is being locked in a structural technical inferiority that will take 3 or 4 seasons to reverse. In a category where tenths of a second are built with thousands of hours of engineering, Ferrari could have gained months or even years of advantage. And in Formula One, time is always worth more than money. What Ferrari is executing is not simply an anticipated strategy, it is a disruption of the conventional development model in Formula One. Its revelation forced all teams to look in the mirror and ask themselves if they are doing enough. Because if it is confirmed that Ferrari is already operating in an advanced validation phase while others are still in conceptual exploration, the implications are enormous not only on a technical level, but in the very structure of how development is planned in elite teams. Each of these teams now faces an uncomfortable mirror: the possibility of starting 2026 with a structural disadvantage compared to Ferrari. And in a Formula One increasingly defined by long cycles of dominance, losing the start of an era does not just mean losing races. It means losing control of the championship, for years. When Frédéric Vasseur spoke, he did so with the serenity of someone who does not need to exaggerate because he already has the facts on his side. His words were measured, technical, even restrained. But its impact was immediate and profound. Because in the language of Formula One, the silence of rivals is as eloquent as any statement. And so far, no one has come out to contradict what Ferrari has shown. That, in itself, is a message. What is happening is not simply an improvement in Ferrari's performance. It is the construction of a narrative that can mark a new era. Every great hegemony in the history of Formula One began like this, with a conceptual advantage that seemed small on paper, but became immense once on the track. When Mercedes debuted its hybrid engine in 2014, many assumed that Red Bull, McLaren, or Ferrari would quickly catch up. They didn't do it. When Red Bull interpreted the 2022 regulations better than anyone, some thought their lead would be short. It wasn't like that either. And now, on the eve of 2026, history seems to repeat itself. But with Ferrari as the protagonist. What they have revealed does not guarantee victories, but it does send an unmistakable signal. They are ready, they are organized, and they are ahead. This possible advance not only has technical consequences, it also has psychological weight. Because if the Bahrain tests validate what Vasseur has said, if the car demonstrates consistent pace, optimized energy efficiency and reliability in extreme heat, then the rest of the paddock will face an uncomfortable truth. The race for 2026 is already over before it began. Leave me in the comments what you think about all this.